Dobrodošli na prvi panel Zaustavite Zemlju, silazim. Naši gosti su danas Njena Ekscelencija Avivit Bar-Iilan, ambasadorka Izraela u Srbiji, Njena Ekscelencija Lugon-Mulen, ambasadorka Švajcarske u Srbiji, Njegova Ekscelencija Aleksandar Vranješ, ambasador BiH u Republici Srbiji i Njegova Ekscelencija Félix, ambasador Meksika u Srbiji. Welcome to the first panel. Stop the earth, I'm coming off. Getting off, our guests are Her Excellency Avivit Bar-Iilan, the Ambassador of Israel in Serbia, Her Excellency Lugon-Mulen, Ambassador of Switzerland in Serbia, His Excellency Aleksandar Vranješ, Ambassador of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Republic of Serbia, and His Excellency Félix, the Ambassador of Mexico, the United States of Mexico in Serbia. So we're going to start. Everybody has... Da, ok, neko prevodi na srpski taj. So, pretty much we have questions which are tailor-made, but some of the questions are universal because the situation is universally like that. The first of all, we have to see the election of President-elect Donald Trump. The second term, this time he's much more confident. He's got the whole ideology of Trumpism behind himself. The first time he had lots of opposition in his Republican Party. Now he hasn't got almost any opposition. He has a good young vice president, J.D. Vance, who's going to be a very good candidate in the next elections in 2028. So we have a whole new Trump, much more confident, and he's threatening a lot of things to do, a lot of things not to do. We're going to see what's going to happen. Let's start with Carlos. President-elect Trump threatened Mexico and Canada with high tariffs, especially Mexico. He said this something about fentanyl drugs and stuff, lots of things. President Sheinbaum threatened to reciprocate a couple of days ago. Would that ruin the ex-NAFTA agreement, now USMCA? But what is the future of former NAFTA zone? How do you think it's a huge market for Mexico, a huge amount of export is going to the United States, especially a little bit less to Canada? What's going to happen if is he just a negotiator? Is he just trying to make a deal?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I think that it's a very interesting discussion about what we are going to see. In the case of, let's say, the new NAFTA Plus, I would say because the other name that it was before NAFTA, precisely this free trade agreement among Canada, Mexico, and the United States. In real terms, so far is the largest and the most important economic bloc in the planet. So we represent a third of the GDP of the world. So in a sense, this has been an effort of integration of value change. It represents precisely how we are a very competitive, perhaps the most competitive economic bloc in the world. And when you are thinking about these questions, so I would say that it's very important to make a difference between rhetoric and reality. So Mexico is the first trade partner of the United States. It's not China, it's not the European Union, it's nor of its member. So Mexico is the first exporter of goods to the United States. So as we are the first economic partner of the United States, so this kind of positions, well, you have to go to reality. And I would say also that it's important to take into account that the first version of NAFTA, at the beginning, the intention supposedly was to finish NAFTA, and at the end, at that time, President Trump signed the new version of NAFTA. So he knows pretty well what is at stake right now. And on the other hand, to discuss trade and investment issues and mixing with other kind of phenomena that we are facing, well, that might not be perhaps the best solution. We have a very complicated situation, yes, in terms of drug trafficking, in terms of migration, but this is not related with the economic future of the region. So if you are also thinking that you want to affect your own and the main partners, not such Mexico, but as well Canada, so you have to think perhaps twice what you really want to do. And secondly, I think that if you have the compromise with your own constituency that you are to make a much better economic situation for your people, if you start to put in tariffs, who is going to pay the tariffs, the 25%? So the US consumer are going to pay that. So what is the effect of this? You will have inflation perhaps, you will have other kind of destabilization of these very complex value chains that are being built for many years among Mexico, Canada, and the United States. So in a short question, I think that we need to differentiate and we need to understand why this kind of rhetoric. We understand that any president might have their own style to communicate, but we are thinking that we're going to start very important negotiations. This is not just trade, but we need to be very realistic, very pragmatic, and of course very intelligent. So over rhetoric, we are going to choose, of course, and we are always doing, diplomacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Now a question for Avivit. Let's stick to Donald Trump. One question is for you about Donald Trump. Is his back? Last time he managed to accomplish the Abrahamic deals, which paved a new path for mutual recognition and peace. I don't know, 5 or 6 countries recognize Israel and mutually. Will there be a second half of it? The end game, your name means spring in Hebrew. I recognized it. So will we finally see the Middle East spring? We're waiting for it. We call it Arab spring, this spring, and no spring ever comes. It's another autumn, just prolonged autumn. Will we see a spring once in our lifetimes?
Well, thank you. Porleche is the Serbian meaning of my name. Definitely, I think we are witnessing history, I would say, in the Middle East. Things that evolve a year ago, the Middle East on 6th of October, before the October 7th event erupted in Israel with Hamas attacking Israel, and our enemies joining attacking Israel in 6 different fronts, changed dramatically the situation in the region. And what we are facing even the last weekend with the collapse of the Syrian regime is will have a very long-term effects and consequences on the whole region, and might also be a lead, I would say, for more optimism for the year to come, 2025, with bringing hope to the people in the region that were suffering a lot in the last year, definitely, and previous years in Syria and Lebanon. And what we have here is an opportunity for reaching stability in the Middle East. There's possibility of moderate forces to take over the extremists, the fundamentalists, the terrorists that were taking hostage of poor civilian populations in Gaza, in Lebanon, I would say also in Syria, and Iran's grip in trying to influence from and what we create using a ring of fire of its proxies, attacking us from 6 different fronts, losing its grip one by one. It goes with Hamas that is almost distracted. Hezbollah's dismantling, now losing a big defeat in Syria because they were the biggest allies of the Assad regime. And definitely with the Abraham Accords you were mentioning were part of the architecture that the first Trump administration was advancing, and this is considered, I think, historically as a tremendous achievement, as a big one that changed the landscape of the Middle East and paved the way for, I would say, coexistence of in the Middle East, of more neighbors of Israel accepting its existence in the region. Our partnership proved to be a very strong one, also during last year. Things that can be mentioned publicly, but also behind the closed doors and scenes. And those partners, Israeli partners in the Middle East, our closest neighbors, will play and have a very important role to play in the next, or the new Middle East that is now created while we are speaking here. So definitely we are open and welcoming and looking forward for more partners in the Middle East to join this trend, the Abraham Accord agreements, and hope for more optimistic and with better news for Israel and for the region in 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. And the question about Donald Trump again, but a little bit more economic, because Switzerland is an economic powerhouse despite its small size and few resources. Its creativity and hardworking people created a superpower in many ways. So Donald Trump is about to change a lot of things. He talks all the time, even with Germany, he talks about tariffs. Like, I don't see too many Chevrolets walking, driving down the streets of Europe. I see many German and French cars in America, etc. So he would like to make America great again. How will it affect Europe economy? Will it be any trade wars? What do you expect? How will it affect the future of Europe and the world, let's say?
Thank you very much for the question, and thanks for inviting me to this panel. Okay, Switzerland might not be the first country you think of when you have to speak about a trade war between the EU and the United States. As you know, we're not part of the EU, but that put aside, Switzerland has always enjoyed very good relationship with the United States, and we do reckon states, and we work with all governments, be them Democrats, be them Republicans. Thank you very much for having mentioned that we are an economic powerhouse in Europe, and indeed our exports to the United States have increased a lot over the last years. It's now overtaking major export nations in Europe, so we are one of the first exporting countries to the United States in Europe. And that is going on regardless of who's running the country on the other side of the Atlantic. I have to say, President Trump attended twice the World Economic Forum in Davos, or even thrice. That was a landmark. That didn't happen before, so being a person who is very linked and attached to business, for us, for the World Economic Forum, which is a private organization, it was a good asset, so I'm quite confident that ties will be strong as they were over the last 4 years. With regard to Europe, I don't know whether this trade tariff will happen. I mean, if we take the US and the EU or Europe at large market, it's such a large share of the world that, frankly speaking, I'm not sure that that any of them will go into a trade war, but that I leave it at this point. Thank you.
Yes, some data said that it would slow down the economy for a couple of percent if the trade tariffs are applied indeed, which would be quite dangerous in a way. So, I mean, you as a country had a good branding. Even we now use Swiss or Helvetica fonts, which were invented by the Swiss designers to show the sobriety of the rationality of Swiss people, and this very idea. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Aleksandra, mi ćemo na srpskom, kao što smo se dogovorili. We made a deal to speak in Serbian because Aleksandar asked me to switch to Serbian because he feels more comfortable and he feels he would express himself more creatively and more in detail in Serbian. So, eto, možemo reći slično pitanje, ove sve promjene u svetu koje se dešavaju, evo imali smo pre 7 dana, 10 dana početak ofanzive pobunjenika u Siriji, sad jučer su preuzeli Damask, opet Izrael, Gaza, Trump, Rusi, Turci, sve se to nekako kao u romanima Ive Andrića, sve se to nekako prelama na Drini Ćuprija i u Travničkoj kronici, to se prelama nekako na Bosnu gde su stanovnici obično skloni da se posvađaju oko svega, pa i oko tih tema koje su strane njima, ali uvek nekako se ispostavi da se nađe neka jabuka razdora. Pa kako će se to sve kako će uticati sve to na Bosnu i Hercegovinu, što se dešava trenutno u svetu?
Prije svega hvala na pozivu. Tražio sam da pričam na srpskom jer dolazim i predstavljam veoma komplikovanu državu i još uz ovako komplikovano pitanje, samo još na engleskom treba da objašnjavam, pa sam želio da bude malo, da se preciznije izražavam na vlastitom jeziku. Dakle, Bosna i Hercegovina je komplikovana i sve ove dodatne komplikacije u svijetu sigurno neće olakšati situaciju unutar Bosne i Hercegovine. Kao što vidite, kad god se nekakav okršaj dešava bilo gdje u svijetu, odmah se u Bosni i Hercegovini podijelimo na one koji su na jednoj strani, koji su na drugoj. Bilo je smiješno, možda da počnem s jednom anegdotom, kada je pobjedio gospodin Biden za predsjednika, slavilo se u Sarajevu. Na ulicama su bila kola, bile su američke zastave. Sad kad je Trump pobjedio, slavilo se u Banja Luci. Sad mislim koliko to zvuči ovako besmisleno, ali je stvarno tako. I onda je Bosna i Hercegovina, dakle, duboko podijeljena država i podijeljeni smo i po unutrašnjim i po spoljnim pitanjima. Šta očekivati? Pa očekivati je da se što manje tih globalnih izazova prelama na Bosnu i Hercegovinu, jer i onako smo u veoma kompleksnim uslovima radimo, tako da nam ne treba još dodatne varijable koje se tiču nekih stvari za koje se mi jednostavno ne možemo ni uplitati, previše smo mali, ali se svakako prelamaju, osjete se određene refleksije. Kada je reč o Trumpovom mandatu ili šta se očekuje, pa evo iz perspektive Republike Srpske očekuje se da se Sjedinjene Američke Države manje miješaju unutrašnja pitanja Bosne i Hercegovine. Ja ću vam reći, 25. godina je potencijalno dobra godina kada je riječ o unutrašnjem dogovoru. Slijedi vrijeme kada nemamo izbornu kampanju. Inače, u Bosni i Hercegovini svake 2 godine su izborne kampanje, da li lokalne, da li opšte. Sad kako je bilo 24. kako su bili lokalni izbori, tek naredni su 26. Tako da je 25. godina neopterećena izborima. To je jedna ovako pozitivna okolnost. U tome svemu može se desiti da dođe do nekih unutrašnjih dogovora, prevashodno kada se tiče puta ka Evropskoj uniji. A kad kažem ova unutrašnja pitanja miješanja, daću vam jednu ovako vrlo plastičan primjer, da je čisto naša publika može bolje da to shvati. Početkom ove godine desio se koalicioni sporazum, odnosno sastanak koalicije vezano za usvajanje izmjene zakona oko suda BiH, formira se novo apelaciono vijeće suda BiH I na tom sastanku u Laktašima, dakle kraj Banja Luke, dogovoreno je da sjedište tog apelacionog vijeća bude u Banja Luci. Ako je sjedište suda BiH u Sarajevu, onda bi, eto, drugostepeni sud bio u Banja Luci. I svi partneri su se dogovorili. I predstavnici bošnjačkog naroda, i srpskog i hrvatskog naroda. I onda su se završilo sve, date su nekakve izjave i ljudi su krenuli kućama. Na putu do Sarajeva, bošnjačku delegaciju su zvali iz američke ambasade da kažu da ne može sjedište apelacionog vijeća biti u Banja Luci. Dok su došli u Sarajevo, oni su javili da nažalost ne mogu da prihvate taj plan da apelaciono vijeće bude u Banja Luci i evo do danas se nisu dogovorili, dakle to je bilo negdje na proljeći. Sad, to vam govorim iz jednog prostog razloga što su očekivanja. Očekivanja su da međunarodna zajednica da više prostora domaćim političkim akterima za pravljenje domaćih političkih konsenzusa koji su neophodni Bosni i Hercegovini, prije svega na putu za EU, ali i za sva ostala pitanja. A ova velika pitanja nadam se da će ostati mimo nas, jer stvarno ništa na tome ne možemo da utičemo, osim da se dodatno svađamo oko toga.
Evo imam ja ideju da rešimo to. Neki viši sud i apelacioni nek budu u Brčkom. I Brčko DC.
Predložit ću to tako.
Evo, nek sve bude u Brčkom, pa to pripada, to je kondominiju, svakako pripada i Federaciji, i Republici Srpskoj. I onda stavite i parlament tamo, izgradite novu zgradu, pa malo i Brčko da procveta, da ministarstva budu tamo. I znači, to je to, sve nek bude tamo i nema svađe, evo, rešili smo sve.
Ne znam šta ćemo sa vladom Brčkog distrikta, osjećat će se da imaju konkurenciju.
Da, pa eto, mislim, to je kao, mnoge zemlje, eto i Meksiko ima Distrito Federal, ima Brazil, ima Distrito Federal, isto Australian Capital Territory, postoji Australian Capital Territory, Canberra, glavni grad i tako dalje. Mnogi gradovi imaju te svoje, što ne pripada nikome, a pripada svima. Pa eto, stavite tamo, pa to je bilo najbolje. Pozdravite sve u Bosni i Hercegovini i ne moraju ništa da mi zahvale za ovo. Samo nek se ne svađaju. Carlos, we talked about this ex-NAFTA, and we don't actually know what's going to happen, but now Mexico is becoming kind of a powerhouse in the region. It's a big country, and also it's a kind of a ancient civilization, and the new world is witnessing the rise of the middle powers, like those from BRICS, India, Iran, South Africa, Brazil, Turkey, etc. Lots of them have their Indonesia. It goes on and on. But everybody has some kind of economical and political aspirations. And if the world is going to be the home of lots of civilization that are generic, the Mesoamerican civilization is really, really deeply rooted in Mexico. And now it has an economical background. It's not a poor country anymore. Will it lead to better connections and a stronger voice of Mexico and the multilateral partnerships, both economical and political of Mexico and other countries, especially if the new administration in Washington applies any kind of tariffs or any kind of punishment measures against the Mexican economy. Will Mexico reach out to outside of North America? Maybe it's a time for that.
Well, I think that, again, we should be very pragmatic about the importance of the relationship that we have built in North America. So if we and the US and Canada need to compete with other economic blocs in the world, so we should continue on the same page and even improving what we are doing right now. Again, Mexico is the first trade partner of the United States. Just to give the dimension of what we are talking about, every minute we trade with the United States $2 million, every minute. So those are astronomical numbers of trade and investment
every
that we
minute
have.
is...
Every minute, $2 million of trade between Mexico and the United States.
That's amazing.
2 million every minute.
That's amazing. That's really amazing.
So this is just to give you the dimension. We know that we belong to the North America region. We need to understand as well the importance of this relationship. The first minority group in the US is Mexican origin. We have 40 million of Mexican origin people living in the United States. We are a family. We are families. So this is other social dimension that you need to take into account when you are talking about rhetorics, talking about other statements that don't correspond to reality. So in a way, and vice versa, we have the largest community of Americans living outside. We have 2 million of Americans living in the US, in Mexico. And by the way, half of them are not legally living in Mexico. So this is the other dimension that we have. So when you talk about all these statements, and again, we need to understand the way of communicate of the president elected. We understand that he is telling this for his own constituency, but reality is there. Reality is there, and again, if you want to be competitive, you cannot affect your own model that has been working and giving you the best economic position. So I think that in that sense, we know that we belong to North America because of these elements that I mentioned, among many others. So we know that we are facing challenges in terms of drug trafficking, in terms of migration, but those issues we need to work together with the US in order to look for solutions. At the end of the day, in this complexity of drug trafficking, so this is driven by demand and supply. So if this product is continue demanding in the market, drugs are not staying in Mexico. So what we're going to do? We cannot solve that problem. It's not for us to solve that problem. In terms of violence, why these Mexican cartels are very violent? Because in the United States, it's so easy to buy a gun. If you want to buy an antibiotic in a pharmacy in the United States, you cannot. But you can buy an AK-47 very easily. So all this influx of very sophisticated guns are getting into the cartels. Other issues, so the cartels are using dollars. In Mexico, we print pesos, no dollars. So the circuit of this kind of money laundering, it's very complex. So yes, we have this kind of challenge, no? But we need to work together. Migration. So we're a transit country. Last year, we received 2 million of different nationalities, 52 different nationalities, 2 million last year, trying to get into the US. They don't want to remain in Mexico. So the US needs to see what they want to do with this, but we are not going to solve that. So we need to work together. I think that in a sense, we belong to the North American region. We know that in Latin America there are many other efforts, but Latin America is a very diverse region. More than 688 million people. Even when we talk about Latin America, it's pretty much a cultural concept, because we talk about Latin America and the Caribbean, because the Caribbean is other very important region. So in that sense, about other projects or BRICS, or Mexico is not really interested in aligning with ideological blocks. We have as well a free trade agreement with 50 different countries and regions, including the European Union, including the Asia-Pacific region, that give us the opportunity to export our products to 1.6 billion consumers around the world. So we are a very open economy. We know about the challenges, but we know reality. So it's not possible that you don't take into account the importance of what we have built in North America, and we are very confident that we will continue in that pace.
Thank you. I'm very glad that 40 million people are from of Mexican origin in the US, because it gets increasingly important for the Anglophone Americans to speak this beautiful language of Spanish. So I'm really happy. For Avivit, we witnessed like 14 months of prolonged crisis after the terrorist attacks of Hamas the 7th of October, I believe, in the last year. Now 14 months this operation in Gaza takes place, and now it's in South Lebanon, clashes with Iran. Now what happened in Syria in the meantime, in the last 7 days. So what is the exit strategy? What's the end game? Some documents appeared from I believe from the Prime Minister Netanyahu's cabinet that Gaza should be rebuilt as New Dubai. That there is oil and that should be completely pacified, the tunnels destroyed and Hamas eradicated, and it should be like a peaceful neighbor and home for the Arab-Palestinian people. But in terms of all these countries like Qatar, like Kuwait, like Saudi Arabia is building itself this way, will it be possible? What's the idea for the day after?
Yes, we have this expression in Hebrew, the day after, and the day after refers to what will happen the day the war will end. For the war to end, in Gaza, there are two preconditions, and nothing can develop further before these two preconditions will be met. And the first one is the return of 100 hostages. Israeli, most of them civilians, young men, women, elderly people. There are among them 2 missing kids. They were all dragged in their pajamas from their beds in the morning of the 7th of October, and since then are held hostage in small cages in the tunnels in Gaza. One of them is an Israeli Serbian young man with dual citizenship. His name is Alon Oel. I had I would say, the honor to accompany his mother while she was visiting for the third time now Serbia last week. And I mean, without the return of all those people to the state of Israel, nothing can develop further. Second, Hamas is not eradicated yet. And this means that for future Gaza to flourish and to become the second Dubai, we need Gaza to be demilitarized, we need it to be de-radicalized with a civilian leadership that is not posing any threat to the state of Israel. And with that, definitely we can build a better future and hope for the poor people of Gaza that were taken, I would say, they were used by Hamas terrorist organization in their constant attacks against Israel, and they also deserve a better future, definitely.
Can all these Arab countries that are the signatures of the Abrahamic deals, can they help in reaching out the comprehensive peace? Now we don't know what's going to happen, what's going to be the politics of the new government in Syria. We don't know. We don't know how will it affect Lebanon, but can we imagine one day prosperous Syria and prosperous Lebanon in peace and mutual recognition with Israel and the Palestinian question resolved happily?
Definitely, I mean, this is a dream, and I would say this is something that we all, I mean, we are, first of all, for all those Arab neighbors in the region that still were thinking that Israel is not here to stay, we are here to stay, and we are here to live in coexistence with our neighbors. I hope so very much. What we were witnessing in the last year is the attempt by one country that do not accept our right to stay and exist in the Middle East to try to eradicate Israel and thanks God and Iron Dome and other Israeli technologies advancement and support of our strategic partners in the region. We prevail and we gain back our deterrence and our upper hand in combating all those threats. Definitely our partners in the region, and namely Egypt, Jordan, UAE, have a very important role to play in what you described the day after. And there's, other room for other players to join in, like Saudi Arabia. And definitely, if we will manage to turn Lebanon in the north to a place where there is coexistence, and there are so many joint interests for all of the region, countries in the region to connect itself and to do better, to offer better life and prospects to our population. Definitely, this will be a win-win for all of us.
Yes. Thank you. And one last question for you,
Please,
because
yes.
Avivit has to
excuse
leave us
me. Yes.
at noon. Now about economy. I would like to switch to economy. How is Israel coping with the constant pressure, especially economic pressure? El Al, I believe, got some unexpected prizes, being the only company flying in and out of Israel. And how is economy working under these conditions? I mean, you have just one airlines, you have all the instability around you, and lots of people engaged with the army and defense. How it all affects the everyday life and economy?
First, I will refer to the airline connections. I mean, we have several Israeli airlines operating back and forth from Israel. Only there's one airline now flying 3 times a week to Serbia. I encourage you to use it and come to visit us. And this is El Al airline, and I hope very much for Air Serbia to resume its flights to Israel soon during 2025, and definitely. Even you might be surprised, but especially during these times of war, it was interesting to note, for me to understand first time, that the number of Israeli tourists to Serbia increased by 20% last year. And this is thanks to the warm welcome and hospitality Israeli tourists feel here, and also because Serbia is kind enough to host the Israeli home games of our basketball teams, and the Israelis, when they want to have some 1 week of relaxation, come here and enjoy the time here, and definitely this is something they deserve. Our economy is very dynamic one, and part of the Israeli way, I would say, way of thinking, of culture even, is to learn from failures and to learn from difficulties. And I would say that this war is also a great opportunity for Israeli companies to develop, to invent, to create new things that are needed. It was mentioned here, the GPA conference, artificial intelligence conference that was taking place here last week, but we had a very prominent Israeli presence here, and we are very proud of it. So we are not, the war is not stopping us from doing what we are good at, what we are striving to do, and even gives us opportunity to invent new inventions. I don't know if you know that, for example, during the war, there is an anti-missiles system, new one. It's called the Arrow 3, that was first time became operational during the war. The war gave the platform to use it first time. This system intercepts missiles out in outer space. Okay, so there are many new ideas about what we can do better, new apps, new I would say, high-tech companies that emerge from the crisis and creating a better, for the betterness of all of us.
Yes, I believe 15 years ago, few people knew that Rabbi Alkalai, I believe, from Zemun was the first man who got the idea of coming back to the homeland, and Theodor Herzl, his parents were from Zemun, I believe, and went to Hungary. And he first time understood that it's possible. So I believe that lots of Israeli tourists now and Jews in the world know that about the story of Rabbi Alkalai.
We used to say that the Zionist movement was first created here in Serbia. And for myself, my father was born here, so it's for me also a kind of connecting back to my roots, and I'm very happy to be here, back to Serbia.
Yeah. Thank you for your...
And excuse me, I need to go to the airport.
Yes, I know. So, thank you. Well, we were quite precise. And one question for Anne. This is going to be about the question of migrants, immigrants. We had a lot of turbulence 10 years ago, 9 years ago, etc., with the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq and Taliban movement in Afghanistan, etc. We had a flood of people coming to Europe, including Switzerland, but especially to Germany, Austria, etc. And it brought a lot of different parties, very frequently right-wing parties, or to the power, or very close to the power, to the power. And now we don't know what's going to happen. Some people say that there will be mass return of immigrants, of migrants to Syria. Some say no, there will be like 5 or 10 million more people because they will be dissatisfied with the new government, because some people in the new government are the ex-members of Al-Qaeda, jihadists. We don't know what's going to happen. With all this turbulence around the world and all this economic instability, what do you think about Western Europe? Is Western Europe prepared for a new wave of immigrants? Will it happen, according to you?
Well, thank you for that question. I didn't expect it, and I haven't prepared anything about it, just for the audience. Well, I mean, of course, everybody has the eyes turned on what's happening now in Syria and thinking, will it re-happen again? Frankly speaking, I don't have a crystal ball. What I know is that, as you said, the populist regimes are now more active in some of our countries. The procedures with regard to asylum seeking and refugees has also tightened a little bit, because in between you had the influx of refugees from Ukraine, and from Ukraine we all accepted in all countries the Ukrainians could stay, could work as well. We changed the status in Switzerland for Ukraine to have a special status so that they can work. That puts an additional pressure on the system. Whether we will be ready to accommodate more flows of migrants or not, I don't know. I have my doubts, but on the other hand, the politics, sometimes the right-wing politics want something, but we are bound to international conventions. And we have all signed the Refugee Convention of the year 1952. UN Resident Coordinator, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 1952. And we are bound to respect those conventions and to provide asylum to people who are leaving war and conflicts. So I still think that we stand upon our values as European countries, and we will do this, but maybe this will put an additional pressure on the refugees claiming asylum when they do not deserve, if I may say that word, that because they don't have the good reason to apply for asylum. So it can maybe push the behavior toward that group of people to be much harder and stronger to accommodate the people living from a conflict. But let's hope that in Syria, peace and stability will happen and that minorities will be protected. It's all about minorities in Syria, and let's hope that now the situation will clarify.
Thank you. Aleksandra, Švajcarska je komplikovana zemlja, ali dobro funkcioniše. Evo sad čekat ćemo da nastavi. Švajcarska je komplikovana zemlja sa puno kantona, ali dobro funkcioniše. Bosna i Hercegovina imaju puno kantona u federaciji, imaju Republiku Srpsku kao drugi entitet i nekako kad god pročitam vesti gradit će se autoput odavde do onde, Beograd-Sarajevo ili tako dalje, ili između Banja Luke i Sarajeva, to uvek ima nekih beskonačnih dogovora i onda moraju se sastati sa Vučićem i Erdoganom i tako dalje, nekako mora i sa Evropskom unijom da se to nešto napravi. U čemu je problem sa tim? Evo, Švajcarci isto imaju nekoliko vera, imaju protestante, imaju kalviniste, katolike, imaju 4 jezika različite, mi imamo 1 jezika, 3 vere. I opet, možemo li nekako biti više u Bosni i uopšte na Balkanu, više Švajcarci na taj način? Da kažemo, dobro, ne moramo se mi ni razumeti u potpunosti, ni u kulturnom, tradicionalnom smislu i šta ja znam. Ne mora se čak možda ni voleti, ali ajde da napravimo nešto da živimo svi bolje, pa da budemo Švajcarska na Balkanu. Možemo li mi to seme nekako presaditi kod nas?
Zvuči jednostavno, ali očigledno postoje neke komplikacije. Konsocijacijski model očigledno jako dobro funkcioniše u Švajcarskoj, ali nažalost ne funkcioniše u Bosni i Hercegovini. Postizanje konsenzusa u Bosni i Hercegovini je ogroman i težak proces i uvijek uzima mnogo elemenata, počevši od političkih, ekonomskih, pa identitetskih i svih drugih faktora. Faktor građanskog rata je jako snažan, još uvijek prisutan, pa različiti interesi, pa različite vizije Bosne i Hercegovine. Imajte na umu da Bosna i Hercegovina još uvijek nema unutrašnji konsenzus oko svog uređenja. Srbi poštuju ono što je sastavni dio Dejtonskog mirovnog sporazuma, dakle jedna visoko decentralizovana država u kojoj entiteti su u stvari nose najveću količinu suvereniteta. Kod Bošnjaka se taj segment, njima se politički taj segment ne uklapa u njihove vizije Bosne i Hercegovine. I kad dođemo do, kako bih rekao, stvaranja nekakvih veoma pragmatičnih planova, i oni nose određene komplikacije. Autoput Beograd-Sarajevo se gradi, ali se gradi dio od Beograda prema Bijeljini. Ali recimo, ono što jeste nelogično, recimo, jako je potreban federaciji autoput između Tuzle i Sarajeva. Imamo Tursku koja daje veoma povoljne kredite za tako nešto i ne počinje se u to. Nije to samo, onda u tom slučaju, kad vidimo da je sad jedan problem na teritoriji federacije, tu nema Srb kao faktor, jel? Ali imamo 3 kantona kroz koje taj autoput treba da prođe da bi spojio Tuzlu i Sarajevo. Znači, 3 vlade moraju donijeti odluke o ekspropriacijama, tenderi se moraju sprovoditi u 3 različita kantona. Sad zamislite samo koliko je to komplikovano. Samo kod jednog veoma, kako bih rekao, jednostavnog projekta koji bi trebao da bude za sve prihvatljiv, jel da se gradi infrastruktura koja nedostaje. Ali opet mnogo faktora sa strane se umješa u tako nešto i mi ne dobijemo na kraju taj rezultat koji smo očekivali. Ali da ne bi sad zvučalo sve negativno, postoje i progresi. Koridor 5C napreduje kroz Bosnu i Hercegovinu. To je koridor koji spaja Budimpeštu i Luku Ploče koja prolazi kroz sredinu Bosne i Hercegovine. On napreduje, ali jednostavno mi moramo, imajte na umu da taj proces donošenja odluka traje dugo.
Od Pečuja Osijek i tako, to taj.
Jeste, ide od Osijeka, spušta se prema Svilaju, od Svilaja prolazi kroz Republiku Srpsku nekih 70 km, ide preko Doboja, Zenice, Sarajevo, Mostar, izlazi u Hrvatsku, ide na Luku Ploče. On se gradi, mi ćemo vidjeti svake godine da se neke dionice nove otvaraju. Dakle, hoću da kažem, procesi nisu zaustavljeni u Bosni i Hercegovini, nego sporo teku. Teku zbog svih ovih problema koje sam na početku naveo?
Pa sporo teku, mislim sad se mi raspravljamo 29 godina posle Daytona, da se ispravlja Dayton. To je potpisano, dok se mi raspravljamo, sporo sve ide, ljudi odoše. Bosna se prazni, cijela istočna Evropa se prazni. Prazne se i druge zemlje, nije Bosna jedina tu koja se prazni, ali strašno je gledati zemlje u našoj regiji koje gube najbolje ljude koji odlaze u inostranstvo zato što ovi ne mogu da se dogovore oko nekih banalnih stvari. Gledao sam kad odem u Albaniju, onda mi je onda zavisno od toga koje su vere, svako ima drugačiju viziju Albanije, ali opet Albanija jako dobro napreduje. Ako pitate pravoslavce, Albanija treba da bude isto druga Grčka, znači nastava Grčke. Ako pitate muslimane, to treba da bude kao Turska otprilike. Ako pitate katolike, to je nastavak Italije, znači treba da se ugleda Italiju i Španiju. Ali svi oni guraju u istom pravcu i na kraju Albanija, ako se setimo da je 1991. godine bila toliko siromašna naspram Jugoslavije da je to bilo strašno, sad je na istom nivou kao i Srbija i Makedonija i Bosna, Severna Makedonija i Bosna.
S tim što nije imala rat.
Da, ali eto, znači, uspevaju nekako da se dogovore i to je ono što mene zapravo svaki put poražava gledajući zemlje bivše Jugoslavije i gledajući Albaniju koja mnogo lošije krenula. Mislim, Makedonija nije imala neki posebno veliki rat, ili Crna Gora, pa ih je Albanija opet stigla. To je malo zaprepašćujuće kod nas. Ne znam šta reći.
Nemamo vremena da sve objasnim.
Da. Carlos, the last question is, I watched quite a lot Star Trek when I was a kid. And I saw the beautiful future where all the civilizations are pretty much equal and the Earth is united. Can we hear the voices of the old civilization, of these middle powers, as I said, but peacefully, like Saudi Arabia, Mexico, Brazil, everybody just saying, yes, I'm the member of the world and I want my voice to be heard, I want to be treated equally, and everybody's going to be finally maybe it's utopia, but I think this globalization took lots of formerly poor regions like Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam is rising economically, dramatically. All those countries, the Economist World in 2025 said that 8 out of 10 fastest growing economies in the world are going to be in Africa in 2025. So Africa is blooming. Are we going to see in, I don't know, decade or two, more equal world with all those voices heard better? Like Mexico is now much more recognized as an economic powerhouse and cultural superpower than 20 years ago. Will it be even better in 10 years? Will we finally see a more equal world?
Well, it's a $1 million question. So I think that, yes, we are facing, of course, a new era in which it's clear that, first of all, the economic blocks are moving. So it's a reality that we are seeing some alignment of the economic blocks. Last week was a very good news that the European Union has approved a free trade agreement with Mercosur, that it's going also a very good opportunity for the economies of South America. That, by the way, again, Latin America is a very diverse region. So some people that are kindly coming to the embassy to make a trip, and they say, well, I want to visit Mexico, and I want to visit Argentina and Brazil. And we told them, well, okay, you need some time, because a flight from Mexico City to Rio is 11 hours, non-stop. So that gives you a reality of the context that we are talking about in Latin America. Talking about the so-called emerging powers, so we think that, yes, it's important to maintain this important dialogue. We understand that there are, as you mentioned before, some projects, local projects, the BRICS I think it's kind of interesting, although I think that it's in a work in progress. It's not very clear if it's economic, ideologic block. But we, Mexico, we are convinced that something that we always forget. We have the United Nations. We found the United Nations. And many people or many countries, even many governments, they say, well, the United Nations is doing nothing, they are not efficient. Well, we cannot blame the United Nations because we are part of the United Nations. If the United Nations is not making progress, it's because we don't want to be engaged and making progress in that. So I would say that we are facing right now precisely in this very difficult international scenario and these conflicts. The Middle East, how was managed in the Security Council, in the UN. So the invasion of Ukraine, how was managed precisely in the UN. So we have there the tools. So in terms of the COP, in terms of the environment, how we are working together. So Mexico is convinced that we need to focus on the multilateral agenda and on the multilateral elements of the tools that we have already, that we built together. So it's there. Why do we need to start making other projects, other initiatives, and not taking into consideration the value of that everybody is there? So we need to react, we need to reactivate, we need to re-engage seriously, I would say seriously, in the multilateral arena within the framework of the United Nations. And we cannot blame the limits of the United Nations because we create those limits. We want to change, let's change it. But I think in this very uncertainty world, in this very complicated, we have the tool to try to manage there. That's why we created the United Nations. So don't forget that. So we created because of the previous conflicts that the world faced. And so far, well, again, the progress of these different situations and conflicts, we are not dealing seriously. These kind of regional initiatives, well, might be flourishing around, but we Mexico, we think that we should focus more on the United Nations Forum.
Thank you. And the last question is, in the meantime, the governments of France and Germany have collapsed. While we were negotiating questions and stuff, in the meantime, the last 10 days, I believe a few days ago, three days ago, the French government collapsed, and like 10 days ago, German government collapsed. What's the future of Europe in all these energy and political turmoils? India, China, and Brazil are leading in new technologies in many aspects, in green hydrogen, for example. Germany's maybe plunging into recession. The old model with the cheap Russian energy and China's market is not functioning any longer. America and China are quarreling who's going to be the leader of the world. Two superpowers. What's the role of Switzerland? Switzerland had a key role 100 years ago when there's a League of Nations. Was Switzerland as a neutral country, not part of the European Union, but a part of Europe and part of the Western world, of course. But Switzerland as a kind of lighthouse of the world, can it lead a reason, should we say, that once again the torch of reason, and somehow say, okay, stop it now. We can show you the way how to reconcile the differences and do something clever and sober, because you're famous for sobriety and reason.
Thank you very much. First of all, a clarity on our neutrality. Neutrality in Switzerland is defined in our constitution as non-military neutrality, in the sense we cannot deliver arms to conflict parties. All the other aspect of neutrality We are flexible. It means we can have a neutrality policy when it comes to sanction, adopting sanction against a country or not. We can take position regarding a conflict or not. All this is a flexibility that we have. When it comes to breaching the international law, like the UN Charter, Switzerland stands by the international value and condemns everything. As you mentioned, we are also the depository states of the International Humanitarian Law Conventions. They were negotiated in Switzerland already 100 years ago, or even before, when the founder of the ICRC was actually so thrilled, he could testify the dramatic effect of some war, and he decided to create the ICRC and to open up to countries to sign the International Humanitarian Law Conventions. There are now 194 countries having signed up to those conventions, and lately, you mentioned the role of Switzerland, we've been called upon the General Assembly at the United Nations, mentioned by my dear colleague from Mexico. We've been called to host one more of those international humanitarian law conventions regarding what's happening in the Middle East, namely between Israel and Gaza. That conference will happen in March. It has to be done after 6 months from the resolution being voted at the General Assembly of the UN. And the 194 parties, signatories to the convention, will be consulted in advance of the conference to see how we can advance the fourth convention, namely the protection of the civilians. So that's one example. Some other examples, we are doing good offices in many, many places. Very famous cases were the latest peace agreement in Mozambique was mediated by Switzerland. There's now peace between the party in power and the rebels. The abducted girls by Boko Haram in Nigeria, this is again Switzerland, who could mediate with Boko Haram to get the girls back and deliver them. We have also mediated several peace deals between the FARC and Colombia, the Colombia government. So we can do those things, but we do things, how should I say, on demands of parties, or bottom-up. That comes back to your modesty you've talked about. We are not there to say, hey, we have the key of the world, we show you the way. This is not the way Switzerland acts. The way it acts is if it finds a way to get in a conflict, take a particular position, take particular relationship to both parties or all parties, then we can address those for the long term. Last example, for example, is what we call the safeguarding foreign interest of countries. Like Iran and the United States have no diplomatic relations, as you know, but Switzerland represents the US in Iran, the United States interest, and reciprocally, we represent Iran in the United States, so that we can do the channel between the two countries, and they have mandated us for doing this. So if there are more demands, the latest one is between Equator and I think, yeah. So that can happen, but it's always on demand and on a subtle manner. Usually you do require people being based in those areas, knowing the actors very well and being able to engage and then take up to the next level, political level, and then to the world level. This is how we operate. Thank you.
Thank you. Saša, evo, pitanje za kraj. Moja omiljena fraza, da ne kažem aforizam, je koja je razlika između pesimiste i optimiste. Pesimista nema ništa, optimista ima ništa. Tako da ako i nemamo ništa, možemo gledati kako možemo nešto od toga napraviti. Okruženi smo ambasadorima dve zemlje koje su izuzetno komplikovane. Za Švajcarsku smo već rekli kako je komplikovana. Meksiko je prošao kroz svoju istoriju zaista mnogo i nasilja od strane i konkvistadora i revolucija i sastoji se od toliko jezika. Osim španskog, postoje još mnogo nacija koje govore mnoge jezike u Meksiku, pa eto, imaju jako funkcionalnu zemlju, konačno, posle mnogo nedaća i mnogo vekova previranja imaju funkcijnu zemlju koja napreduje i oni su se složili oko nečega. Možemo li računati da ćemo moći jednom da apelujemo na razum? Evo, neka to bude za kraj ovog panela, razum. I ovo u Siriji što se desilo, za sad, ova zadnja 24 sata kao da imaju razuma, ali ne znamo da će to potrajati. Tamo imamo te džihadiste koji su nastavili da Al-Kaide, imamo Alavite, imamo Druze, Kurde, one koje podržava Turska i tako dalje, Amerikanci, znači, ali opet njima će trebati puno razuma da sve to prevladaju. Da li mi možemo očekivati, eto, Švajcarci imaju razuma, Meksikanci su napravili jednu razumnu zemlju.
Samo Bosna nema razuma.
Neko na Balkanu mi se čini, kao da na Balkanu najmanje razuma ima. Da li mi možemo napraviti razuma malo više kod nas, da napravimo jedan prosperitet? Eto,
naravno, i pazite, sad da ne bih naša publika stekla utisak da samo u Bosni nema razuma, nije tako.
Ne, nipošto nisam to rekao.
Tako da ne bih mogao tako da tvrdim. Stvar je sledeća, postoje otvorena pitanja, ne samo kada je reč unutar Bosne i Hercegovine, kada je reč o Zapadnom Balkanu. Postoji mnogo opterećavajućih činjenica iz rata ili iz ratova koji su nas ovdje zatekli skoro čitav 20. vijek možemo da stavimo, podvedemo pod tu činjenicu. Ali kad sve pogledamo to što postoji progres. Taj progres se vidi, ne možemo da kažemo da ga nema. Vi kad govorimo o Bosni i Hercegovini, ako neko dugo nije bio pa nek prođe gradovima Bosne i Hercegovine, vidjet će fizički da ti gradovi izgledaju danas ljepše i funkcionalnije i ostalo. Tako da ne možemo da kažemo da nema progresa, a progresa nema bez razuma. Dakle, naravno, i mediji su mnogo, kako bih rekao, orijentisaniji prema lošim vijestima i toga uvijek ima. Naravno, tamo se svađamo, imamo 3 konstitutivna naroda, pa sad svi dok iznesu neke svoje stavove, mediji se pune takvim stavovima. Ali ako sve to stavimo na jednu stranu, ipak postoji nekakav progres i svako ko ode tamo vidjet će da taj progres postoji, a tog progresa ne bi bilo bez razuma. Tako da ne bih baš bio toliko oštar da kažem da ipak, ali naravno postoji još uvijek neke svježe rane, no postoji još uvijek stvari koje se ne mogu tek tako lako zaboraviti jedni drugima i to opterećuje odnosi. Ali stvari se mijenjaju, ja vjerujem, ja sam optimista sa početka vašeg pitanja i vjerujem da zbog budućnosti naše djece i svega ostalog, da će taj razum i u budućnosti biti primarna vodilja svih nas tamo.
Hvala. Hvala svim prisutnima koji su ispratili ovaj panel. Sat vremena je prošlo od početka. Hvala našim gostima, hvala i Avivit koja je otišla, ambasadorki Izraela.